Hopefully, you grabbed your lunch or poured some coffee, and you're looking forward to learning something new about Luzmo. And together with me today is Noah. So, Noah, over to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us a few words about the topic of today's office hours.
Yep, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name's Noah. I'm an account executive here at Luzmo, primarily working in the North American market. The topic for today is building with AI in Luzmo. There are a couple of things we're going to cover. The first being how your end users can leverage AI in the context of analytics inside of your platform, how you can use AI to build with Luzmo inside of our platform, and then finally, using AI to build with Luzmo externally. So using Luzmo with coding agents, etc. So I'm really looking forward to diving into those topics.
Thanks for the intro. And, to get us going, to warm up a little bit, I'm really curious to hear your experience. AI has changed everything dramatically in the past few years. And so, what is your experience with using AI in Luzmo, with Luzmo? What has changed for you as someone who uses it pretty extensively and also works along our customers?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a really good question. So, one of the biggest challenges that our clients have faced over the past few years is getting requests constantly from their users for new dashboards, new insights inside of their application. And traditionally, the answer has been, okay, let's allow them to build it themselves. And then you're obviously faced with a bit of a learning curve. Your clients may not be familiar with using a quote unquote BI platform. If you're telling them, okay, add a chart, add these columns, they may not be familiar with all of that. So the solution that we're presenting is the option to essentially use natural language prompts to generate those insights, have them effectively persist inside of your application and lower that barrier to entry for your users. And then on the other side of it, Luzmo has always been very easy to use for product managers, engineers, etc., to build dashboards, but the implementation is oftentimes a bottleneck. AI has really reduced that time to market even further, and I think we're well positioned to deliver even faster on that now.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And, because these sessions are really practical, really hands on, zero slides. So maybe let's just jump in and maybe you can start from, sharing your recommendations and best practices, how to use AI in Luzmo to speed things up if you are building from scratch or if you're iterating on the existing dashboards that you're embedding for your end users.
Totally, yeah. I'm going to start from the beginning in terms of connecting to a data source with Luzmo, how we speed all of that process up. So I'll start sharing my screen. Definitely we'll keep an eye out for any questions, so feel free to jump in at any point. So this is the page that you'll be presented with an overview of all of your dashboards inside of the Luzmo application. Some of you may already be familiar with this. The first place that we're going to start is the actual data sets that we're going to be leveraging to build inside of our dashboards. I'll just click into one of these data sets that I've already made a connection to. We'll get a quick preview of all of the columns that exist inside of here. And the first point that I would like to go to is the actual descriptions of these columns. So you'll notice I already have some. I'll quickly remove a couple and we'll pretend that I didn't. Luzmo gives you the option to actually create column descriptions, which will ultimately serve as the foundation for a lot of the context that we'll use for generating insights for our users. So you'll see that I've typed some out already. If we wanted to add additional instructions, that's totally possible. This is all going to build into the metadata that we'll use to serve those answers to your clients. So the dataset names, the column names, and the column descriptions as well. So this should complete in a second or two.
That's the beauty and magic of live demos.
Of course. So now we have those completed, and we have the descriptions for our data set. Let's say that there are some columns that we'd also like to report off of or use inside of our charts that don't exist currently inside of this data set. Luzmo gives you the option to actually create calculated fields on top of the existing ones. So for today, we're actually going to create a formula. You can think of this as a derived column, except it also contains an aggregation at the top level. Here we can prompt to create a formula. So in this case, I'd like to see the average profit per transaction. And right now I only have the revenue, cost, and discounts associated with those transactions. So I'll say, let's show me the average profit per transaction. So you can see here that Luzmo automatically generated that formula for us. This looks correct to me. And then we can create a name for it and eventually report off of that or allow our users to query this as well in the embedded context. So from here, we have a data set that is ready to be used, and we can now take this into our dashboards and start building. Again, this is from your perspective when you're going to be embedding dashboards for your clients. In a little bit, we'll also take a look at this from the context of an end user who's ultimately accessing these dashboards. So the first thing we're greeted with when we go to add an item to our dashboard is our prompt to chart functionality. Inside of here, I'm going to select a data set. We'll work off of that same one that we were using before. And let's start with a relatively simple question. Show me the average revenue by transaction type. And when I prompt here, we'll see that the chart will automatically be added to the dashboard. I'm likely expecting either a column or a bar chart here, but I'll show you in a second that we can also switch that if we don't get our expected results. On the right side, you'll notice that Luzmo is also explaining the steps that we're taking here to generate this insight. And just like I mentioned, the chart has created as expected. If we open up the chart settings here, we can customize this a bit further. So let's say we'd rather see this on a donut chart. Luzmo will then make that adjustment for us, and now we can use this chart inside of our dashboard. Secondarily, we also have the ability to customize this through our traditional drag and drop interface. So if we exit out of this prompt section over here, we still have all of the chart customizability that you would expect from Luzmo without using those prompt functionalities. Taking it one step further here, let's say we've now built a dashboard that we want to embed. We can now go into our analyst tab. This is effectively Luzmo IQ, but inside of our application. So we're going to select a data set or data sets to work off of and get some examples of what kind of questions would be appropriate for our users to ask based on the data that we're providing. So if I wanted to ask a question like, what transaction type has the most revenue? Luzmo IQ will then identify the appropriate data set. In our case, we've only given it permission to access one, and then generate a response for us to show us what that might look like. So then we can theoretically copy this to a dashboard. If we created a new dashboard, we can open that. I'll switch the tab really quickly, and you'll see that that chart has then been added for us. So a couple of different ways of approaching it. We can start from the dashboard screen or the analyst tab, continue working from there a couple of different ways. I'll pause really quickly.
Do you have a recommendation, Noah, when it's better to start with the analyst and when it makes sense to do it vice versa?
Yeah. So I think for those who are inclined to build dashboards already, maybe you've used like a Power BI or a Tableau in the past. I think Luzmo is definitely a very user-friendly experience, and a lot of those skills will translate over. In those cases, accessing the dashboard using the prompt functionality and then clicking further in is very easy to do. If you really just want to get a feel for what Luzmo IQ can do and what types of questions you can expect it to answer, and then maybe use some of those charts that it generated inside of a dashboard. I would approach it that way. Personally, since I'm kind of a big fan and a super user of Luzmo, I definitely like to take the dashboard approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's continue.
Absolutely. So let's consider that we've now built a dashboard. We're happy with the responses that we're getting from Luzmo IQ. We're then going to take a look at this from the embedded context. So switching tabs here, we now have a demo application that we're looking at from an end user's perspective. So I've logged in. The Sales Compass platform has given me access to Luzmo in a bunch of different ways. Conveniently, they're a really good client of ours, so they use us absolutely everywhere inside of their software application. And right now we're navigated over onto their homepage. There are a couple of different Luzmo elements embedded inside of here. Some of them may look familiar, like these chart objects. You'll see if we apply a filter, the chart objects will update as we make those selections, just as you would expect. But then we also have this textual summary that's being generated by Luzmo IQ. Effectively, this is using our answer component with some context that has been provided by the Sales Compass platform. In this case, we're telling Luzmo, hey, Marcus is a sales director. Here are some things he might care about. Generate the summary for him, and we'll embed that at the top of this page. And then down here on the bottom right, this is really what everyone's going crazy over. I feel like every application I'm accessing now has some sort of chatbot. In this case, Luzmo IQ has a chat component that you can embed. In this case, it's embedded as a React component. And as an end user, we can ask questions to a subset of data that Sales Compass has permissioned us to access. So if we think about this in the context of what I've already shown you, some of those data sets that I've provided those column descriptions for would become super useful here when we're going to give our users access to them. So if I use one of these suggested prompts, like what is our average deal size, you'll notice that this will function almost identically to that analyze page inside of our application when we were testing this data set. So we'll get a textual response alongside a chart object. And as an end user, that may be sufficient for the question that I was trying to answer, but I'd like to dive a bit deeper. Let's see this show me by rep. So now not only do we have the average deal size, but we have the average deal size broken out by rep. And one of the cool things about Luzmo IQ is that there are a lot of customizable fields that you can include alongside this embed to give the users more or less access to manipulating what's going on inside of this chat. So in this demo instance, we have it pretty locked down, but you can also give your users the ability to further customize these charts all from inside of this component, whether that be modifying the aggregation that's taking place. So right now we're looking at an average. You could change that to a sum, or even changing the chart type or adding additional fields to the visualization. And then one of the common questions, yeah, go for it.
Really quickly, something that I've been hearing quite a lot as a question is about the end users, like how tech savvy do they need to be for you to confidently share something like that with them? Do you feel they need to be reasonably tech savvy, or you feel like it's a pretty intuitive experience and people who are familiar with interacting with LLMs, querying their own data in natural language prompts will feel pretty comfortable interacting with this experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would definitely say that this is the lowest lift in terms of like an end user putting in effort to generate insights. They don't need much context in terms of what's going on here to be able to access the data, right? If we're accessing this inside of a CRM, we would be expecting information on deals, accounts, etc. If we're accessing this inside of a marketing platform, your clients will typically know which data they have access to, and therefore asking questions in natural language should be like a pretty effortless experience. We've kind of bridged the gap between the text to SQL and then also making that SQL actually impactful, right? The user gets to skip all of those steps and they go straight from prompts to insight. So I would definitely say that this is one of the easiest ways to allow users to query data.
Yeah, that's my impression as well from what you're showing.
Cool. And like I said, I think many people have kind of chatbot fatigue right now, and there are a lot of reasons beyond just being scared of AI to not use this. So you can also just embed Luzmo IQ within the interface that your users are already interacting inside of your app. And that's the point of this bar up here. You can think of this as kind of like the site navigation. So maybe I ask a question here on where's the support page, etc. We also have Luzmo IQ embedded inside of here. So your users can simply just ask questions like, what are our biggest deals? And Luzmo will perform the same actions that you've seen inside of this component here, but instead inside of the site's native search function. So we're really trying to make it as accessible for users as possible, not adding steps to their normal workflows, really trying to make it feel like a cohesive experience inside of your application. So I'll quickly touch on something not AI related. Boo, I know that's not really what anyone wants, but it's important context for the next thing that I'm going to show you, and still one of the best parts of Luzmo, in my opinion. So we're looking at a traditional embedded dashboard. I'll actually switch over to this one here. And much like you would expect, all of the functionality that's existed in Luzmo forever is still inside of here. So if we apply selections on charts, the rest of the widgets will update. We can download the data from the chart objects, setup, scheduled exports, etc. So why is this important? Typically, no matter how many dashboards you provide users, and I've worked with companies that have thousands of dashboards that they're giving to their users inside of their application, there's still going to be things missing from your client's perspective in terms of, oh, it would be cool if I could break this down that way or see this another way. And like I mentioned before, we do have our embedded dashboard editor, which allows your users to build and create charts inside of your application. But that same prompt to chart functionality now exists in that editor as well. So with a couple of lines of code modified on that original dashboard embed, you can actually give users access to create their own copies of those dashboards that you have embedded for them, and then prompt to add charts to that experience and really make it their own without them ever having to contact your support team or customer success team to have them build new dashboards. So one of the sub goals of this is obviously shortening the loop in terms of users needing to submit requests for new dashboards. So if I could very quickly just say something like, show me amount by competitor, this chart will now be added to my version of this dashboard that Sales Compass has provided to me. Once it generates, I'll quickly resize it. So we have that chart that I now wanted to add, and then we can go into this tab up here and share with the rest of our team, for example, if we would like to give the rest of the sales team, in this case, access to Marcus's custom version of this dashboard. Secondarily, we also have our modular report builder. Effectively, this is leveraging Luzmo's analytics component kit. I won't spend too much time here today, but you can also prompt to create charts or even give your users suggestions of charts that might be interesting to add to their dashboards. Again, just trying to make it as easy as possible for users to get access to those insights.
And just a quick call out here that we ran a session on analytics component kit earlier today, and we do have the recordings available on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you're curious to learn more about ACK, you can also check those out. We ran a similar hands-on demo session, so you'll find plenty of interesting nuggets there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great shout. And I think it's a good transition into the last thing that I was planning to show, kind of bringing this all together inside of the embedded context for users. I'll quickly share my screen again. So this is just another software application that is used for demo purposes. I actually built this one using some of the Luzmo docs that I'll wrap on. The most important things to note inside of here is really just giving users access to data in a way that's very flexible to them, but of course with guardrails, right? So what we're looking at here is a bunch of different columns from a bunch of different data sets, allowing users to then select the columns that are relevant to them. Let's quickly click a couple of these. You can see our table is now building below this as well. And again, this is all leveraging different Luzmo components. I have them annotated here. Once we're happy with the fields that we have selected, you can then give your users the option to use some of the suggestions that we've automatically generated using Luzmo's AI chart generator. So I'll click on some of those. Those AI charts should generate relatively quickly. And then if we go into the AI mode over here on the right side, we also have a couple of different ways that users can interact with their data via AI. And like I mentioned, wrapping on the docs here, we have a couple of different files that you can leverage to build with Luzmo, whether it be the agents file for using coding agents like Cursor, Copilot, Claude Code, etc. Our LLMs.txt file is really good for just quick questions and general context related to building with Luzmo. And then you obviously have the full file, which is kind of a combination of both, and really just giving you full access to all of the Luzmo documentation and making your agent a Luzmo expert.
And just a quick question to wrap this up. I guess you showed us how AI is used in Luzmo and how you can use it alongside Luzmo when you're building something with your coding agent. From your perspective, what are your recommendations when to use AI? What does it give you? Does it speed you up? Does it give you more variety to work with? And maybe some tips and tricks and best practices from you, because I know you tried building quite a bit using AI in tandem with Luzmo. So maybe some recommendations for folks getting started with it.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really powerful for lean teams, right? Luzmo is really powerful, not only because of how easy it is to use, but the fact that we're API first. So a lot of the actions that I was showing you inside of our platform can also be performed via our API. And I know that starts getting a bit intimidating for less technical team members that are implementing Luzmo. But using coding agents to kind of prove out certain concepts or framing or mocking them up for how you'd ultimately like your implementation to look is super powerful. And one of the best examples of that is that Luzmo allows you to create custom events to trigger certain actions inside of your platform. Obviously, you have to set up event listeners on specific charts. And once you start going into those very specific details, again, that can be a bit intimidating for those that simply don't know how to code. But if you leverage those files that I was just sharing with a coding agent, you can very nicely mock up some of those examples of how you'd ultimately like that interactivity to look once you have Luzmo embedded. There are tons of examples like that, but off the top of my head, it's something that I've done recently. So that's definitely a good one.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I do see that we have quite a few users watching us both on YouTube and LinkedIn pages. So I'm going to check really quickly in case we have any questions there, because I really want to address them live. And I know many of you will be watching this in recording as well. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ping us later when you're watching this in recording, so that we can follow up with you in case you have any questions, how to get started with Luzmo, how to make the most of it with AI, and so on. So yeah, just really quickly going to check if we have any outstanding questions we can address live, and we'll be getting ready to wrap up.
Perfect.
Yeah, seems like we don't have any questions at the moment. Thanks, Noah, for the great walkthrough. And to everyone watching both live and in recording, we're doing these sessions regularly every week, every Wednesday. We're trying to pick different practical topics to help you get started with the core Luzmo functionality. We also talk about some of the recent improvements and features that our team is shipping. So tune in every Wednesday. Questions welcome. And thanks again, Noah. See you later. Thanks,
Thanks, Lenny.
everyone.
Bye.